Hello, my name is Trishna, and I want to talk to you about my journey with public speaking. Without much ado, I'd just like to jump right into it. And so, this whole thing began in ninth standard when I was 14 years old. Now, before I get into what happened with public speaking, I'd like to share with you what kind of a person I was back then. So, I was a backbencher. I was wanting to stay alone, aloof, and I really didn't like too many social interaction. So essentially, in school, my whole strategy was to do enough so that it was okay. Um, so whether it was academic, whether it was the expectations people had, so academic, of course, was the most important thing. Other things were optional. So my mom knew this about me, and she knew that I would keep to myself and away from everything that was going on. So she actually went to the teachers and she told them, which I found out much, much, much later in life, that I should be pulled out and be included in some activities and things like that. So, anyhow, in the morning, every morning at around 8 o'clock, we used to have this assembly. So, 300 of us students around from the middle and the high school would gather on the ground, finish our prayers before we started classes. So, teachers in this assembly decided that they wanted to host a skit. There were 6 to 10 of us, if I remember correctly, and we were given two liners that we had to go and read out in front of the crowd. Now, because our voices had to reach across, 300 people, kids mostly, but also teachers and the principal, etc. We had a mic right in the front. So I remember that space, it was like this corridor kind of thing, had steps which acted like a stage, and then we used to have the assembly happen from there. So I went with these two liners and I read them out. And while I was reading out, my voice actually ran so very clear. It was heard much, much clearer than almost anybody in that group. So the teachers actually decided that I was going to participate in a public speaking contest. And me, what would happen with me is if I was asked to do something, I would never say no, but I would show so much of lack of enthusiasm or disinterest in getting it done or uninvolvement in getting it done that people would just kind of just leave me by. And that was my strategy with public speaking as well. Having said that, whenever I did something, I did it well. I gave it everything that I had, but I also made it very clear that this is not something that I'm passionate about and you're kind of forcing me to do it. So I got this Jawaharlal Nehru speech. It was a two-page speech, one full page, and the next page ran about three quarters. I still remember those words, tight words written on the sheet. It was a lovely speech, it meant a lot. At that time, however, there were two aspects for me over here. One is I had this absolute notion or a choice on memorizing. So I thought memorizing was just crap, and I didn't want to do it because for me, understanding concepts and really working through situations and using our own words to communicate, especially in subjects like English and history and geography, where it mattered a lot, where you could just by heart and reproduce. For me, it was really like I wanted to get the story, I wanted to understand it, and then write it in my own words, use my own words, and use my own voice. So, when it came down to this, while I understood the words themselves, I didn't understand the meaning that was behind what I was reading. But since I was tasked with it, I was like, okay, let's get this done. So before the event itself, I was confident of the first half. The second half, I was okay with it, but I was tending to kind of not really get there. I was needing the paper to refer, and we had to deliver the speech without the paper. So I was like, okay, cross my fingers on the stage, and then let's do the best that we can. I told myself this, and I was there. One paragraph into it, it started to sink into me what I was doing. I was standing there in front of the mic, saying this speech that I had no clue what it was all about. And there were these 300 people crowd who were just looking at me, listening to me. I blanked out. I skipped one para. I read two lines and then I forgot. So there was a teacher at the back and he was like, hey, it's okay, calm down, repeat it, try. And I was like, okay. And then I was like, okay, let me just repeat it. So I repeated the two lines and then I just blanked out. I could not remember the rest of the speech. So I said, I'm very sorry, and I walked off the stage. So obviously, I didn't qualify for the rest of the contest. I was out. In a way, I was relieved. Maybe I don't know. I didn't really respond at that time. But in my behavior, when I look back, I actually just withdrew myself, and I after that I didn't want to participate in anything. I was just like, no. It was a lucky thing, maybe because I was in the ninth grade, and the ninth and the 10th grade, we had like our public exams coming up. Everybody's sort of got focused on the academics, and then there was no focus on the public speaking bit of it. Fast forward to my graduation, I had decided to do or specialize in HR. I was doing my business management at the moment, and I wanted to participate in growth and development of people and find their passion and like really do well at their jobs, etc. And I wanted to be an instrument in making that happen. So when it came to doing HR, my first job was really into recruitment, and I quickly realized that recruitment at that time, at least I didn't see it that way. Everything is instrumental in helping people grow in some way or the other. When I look back at it, it indirectly is. But at that time, I was like, I'm just looking at resumes and I'm shortlisting resumes, and this is not what I wanted to do. And I wanted to get into training, you know. So, and I did in 2005, around 4 or 5 years later, after my first job, I got into training. Now, this company that I was a part of, this initiative that I got involved with, I was so passionate about everything. I knew deep in my heart that this is, going to transform people, and I wanted to do everything that I could to get the word out, and I wanted to be instrumental to let people know that you have this option, and your life could change forever. You could achieve your dreams and whatnot. And what happened as a result of this passion that I had and this absolute trust and confidence that I had in that fact that this would work is I would just speak. I would speak to individuals, I would speak to groups, I would speak to anybody. I made presentations about the company, I did a lot of workshops, I represented my company in a public forum, as a spokesperson in international platforms, and I also started doing these talks about different subject matters as I evolved. I peaked in one of the speeches that I had given, which was like a 15-minute thing. It was a very short speech, it was very crisp, and I was part of my networking. I was invited to this. I was given a slot, which is, after lunch period, there is this slot where everybody is very switched off and tired and sleepy, and they just want to like get it over with. There were two more speeches after me, and that's the phase in which I got up on stage. I finished my speech, and the whole atmosphere had just changed completely. The next two speeches went very differently from the speeches that had gone through the day. People who were bored, people who were indifferent, people who were getting switched off actually wouldn't leave the room. The organizers were like, they were like, we have served you dinner, we need to close the hall, we have a time limit, we kindly request you to proceed outside. Like, they were literally, as politely as they could, push people out. In this particular speech, it was a milestone for me because I peaked. Over a period of time, what had happened to me is somebody who was extremely fearful had come a full circle where I was on stage, completely open, completely vulnerable, completely giving, without my focus on what people would think, feel, whether I'll be accepted or not, will I be validated or not, will I be admired or not. None of that. And I was truly open to feedback. I genuinely wanted to know how I did, what made a difference about my speech to people. Did I contribute something to other people? What is it that I could do to improve? So I was looking forward to that feedback, and I went back, I watched my video, I did that feedback session with my colleagues and everything. I even asked people, I hope you got value and things like that. And it had come a full circle. So, fear of public speaking is one of the biggest fears in the world for sure, but for me, it ran a lot deeper. It was fear of death. So, for me, the fear ran so deeply unconscious for me that I wouldn't even think about my final days. I wouldn't think about my mortality. I wouldn't think about my old age or sickness or anything. I just like escape from that possibility, that from reality that at some day it might really happen, right? And as a result of that fear, I also perceived threats where there were none in my day to day situations, and public speaking actually brought that out as well. Over a period of time, I learned that when I did public speaking, when I went on stage, when I spoke, and if it was about getting admiration, it was about getting feeling confident about myself, it was getting some sense of validation from other people, or some kind of an endorsement about the fact that I'm safe and I'm okay and I'm significant enough for me to stand there and say something to you, and you'll acknowledge me as somebody as important. If any of my stuff when I was delivering was rooted in that, I would be ineffective in small or in a big way, right? And when I was in this very unconditional space, I got into this absolutely giving, open, and trust you me, that feeling of being on a center stage where the spotlight was on me, I would feel absolutely naked, like I was sharing my being in that moment with those people. And when I did that 100 out of 100 times, I made a difference. And when I was looking for my admiration, when I was looking for validation, when I was looking to be confident about myself, when I was looking at making it a point where I had a vested interest in that whole engagement, I wouldn't do so well. So I decided I had to, and I decided to take a break because looking after mom and working got very overwhelming. Mom passed away. She was unwell for a very long time, and she passed away in July in 2024. But in 2022, I was having this conversation with her, and I was like, what do I do? Because I wasn't working full time anymore, and I wanted to do something to contribute back. And I was like, let me do public speaking. So that is the time I put together this framework. This framework is so I actually, very important to communicate here that I separate presentation skills from public speaking. So presentation skills for me would be the voice modulation, the kind of words and vocabulary we use, the body language, our own personal style in the stage, on the stage, etc. Public speaking for me is being in the moment, being able to share ourselves, a piece of our being, with the world at that moment in time. And it is a voice we use to give something in that space. So it is obviously given that one is contextually relevant. There are people who are coming with a specific requirement, and we're catering to that requirement. So public speaking for me is giving a voice to who we are at that moment. So if we've lived it as our truth, and when we speak that truth using our voice, it makes a difference. And this is something that I found through years, 15 years of doing this over and over and over again. And when I looked around as to what was being offered and what people wanted to do and what we wanted to give and how they wanted to make their presence felt, I wanted to bring this forward and offer this to the leaders of our world. So for me, leaders are not people. They are, of course, I wouldn't say not people. I would say you are, of course, a leader if you're heading a company and, the world formally acknowledges you as a leader. But also somebody who's choosing to walk their own path, who's exercising their own voice to express themselves fully in a context, meaningfully so, purposefully so, so that they give back and one makes a difference in that particular space. So these offerings, if one can call it that, the public speaking repertoire is how I refer to it rather than a skill in itself, is a bunch of attitudes, behaviors, thought processes, also checkpoint with oneself at various stages to see that we are rooted in the right space, we are bringing the right, I wouldn't, when I say right and wrong, I don't mean to say in a validation sense, but it's a sense of being in that moment, in that space, in a relevant, meaningful, and a purposeful way. That's what I mean when I use the word right. So we're bringing that from inside of us, and we're really giving it a voice, and we are delivering that in a effective and a composed manner, in a way that is truly giving to that space in the context of the way that space has been created, right? So then the space presents a need, and one is in a position to offer something to that need, to fulfill that, right? So that is what I wanted to offer. There are various levels. There could be like a presentation skills, that's a course. There is this engagement, a very dynamic engagement that we do together, which is really building this public speaking repertoire. So it's shaped like a course, but it is a very dynamic process. Then I work with people side by side to go through this whole journey of conceptualizing to actually delivering their speech. If you are an organizational head and you want to really look at your business and then present your business in a particular context, or your vision in a particular context, that's something that I work on by observing you, getting to know you, getting to know your business, seeing what best could fit into that particular space, adding to the skills that you already have, thought processes that you already have to enhance if such enhance is required, or just saying, hey, acting as a soundboard and really saying, hey, this really works. Now if you've noticed, I have deliberately not tried to make this video perfect because it sounds artificial. I want to be able to connect with you and speak with you one-on-one as a friend, and that's why I allow this speech as well that I'm making in the video to be as natural as possible as I would normally speak in any situations. And this is how I've given my public talks as well. So that could be the third service. The fourth one would be if you want a feedback on something that you're working on, you just want an observer to come back and say, hey, these are the things that I observed, these are the things that I experienced while you did what you did. I'm here. So these are the various customizable aspects. There's more information on the presentation, which is like a PDF. So please take a look and feel free to get back to me. I would love to have a conversation and be a part of this wonderful journey that you're embarking on to share you with the world. Bye-bye.